Hey everybody, Flound here with fight card analysis and predictions for UFC 83, Serra versus St. Pierre in Montreal. Each fight will actually be on its own video because together they all went over 10 minutes. In this video we're going to talk about the Kalib Starnes versus Nate Quarry fight. I think this is going to be an interesting fight. Our first opponent, Kalib Starnes from Surrey, British Columbia, has a record of 8-2-1. He's had 4 fights in the UFC. Was a contestant on the Ultimate Fighter Season 3, and he actually beat Mike Stein in the first round. I think he the fight was stopped in the first round, and he actually went to couldn't start the third round due to injured ribs in against Kendall Grove in the semis. I actually thought Kalib was acquitting himself rather well on the Ultimate Fighter. I think he may have competed for the contract had he not gotten injured, and that was a pretty serious injury, as I recall. I think his ribs were separated from his sternum, which just doesn't sound good. Anyway, those are exhibition matches. They don't actually count towards records, so but we'll just keep in the back of our head. His first fight in the UFC proper as a professional was against Danny Abadi, also from Tough 3. And I got to admit, Starnes looked good in that fight. He showed some good jiu-jitsu. Was very composed. His striking wasn't the greatest. Got a takedown of Abadi and quickly ended up submitting him with a rear naked choke. I thought he looked very good in that fight. His next fight, probably his first quality opponent in the UFC, was against Yushin Okama, and that was a loss by Starnes. And I got to admit, he was TKO'd in the third round. Not that I have to admit that, but I got to admit, Okami definitely got the better of that fight. There was some close bits in the second round. You may have given the second round possibly to Starnes, although I wouldn't. I thought Okami controlled the fight for the most part. What I found interesting in that fight was, number one, Starnes was actually taken aback by Okami's punching power. He actually mentioned it in between the first and second rounds. He never got a chance to utilize any of his jiu-jitsu, and his takedowns were almost non-existent, really. Okami actually got him down a couple of times, if I recall. Although he did make a nice sweep at one point, but nothing of any great import in that fight. Then he fought Chris Lieben, and in the Chris Lieben fight, it was almost like it was a different fighter. His offensively, his striking was improved. He threw some good punches. Even at one point, and this actually surprised me quite a bit, in the second round, he threw a right hand that actually looked like it wobbled Chris for a little bit. And I was quite surprised for that, because I did not think Starnes had that kind of power, even just to do it once. But he did it, and, Chris Lieben does have a chin, so it couldn't have been just a little tiny shot. So that kind of surprised me. Additionally, in that fight, he was throwing some good leg kicks, and more importantly, his stand-up defense was looking pretty good. Lieben's, not what I'd call the most technically proficient striker, but he throws with intent, and he's got some heavy hands, and Starnes managed to avoid quite a bit of the damage that Chris was throwing his way, which I was really surprised at. I thought he had showed some huge improvement over the Okami fight. It showed that he was working towards something. And then he fought Alan Belcher, and that was actually stopped in the second round, TKO due to a cut. It was a pretty nasty cut, actually. I think there was a point you could see his skull or something like that. Anyway, other than that, he was getting controlled by Belcher. Belcher is a good striker, good clinch and some good knees, and Kalib didn't appear to have an answer for that. My take on Kalib is his jiu-jitsu did seem good, although I'm not sure how good it is based on the fact that it was his best jiu-jitsu I saw against Danny Abadi, and Danny Abadi I just don't think has the talent to hang in the UFC at this point. So I'm not sure. And his stand-up is improving, but it's not great. I haven't seen any spectacular takedowns from him. For the most part, they appear to be like a sort of a clinch and trip. Nothing beyond that. No driving throughs, no single legs or double legs. Definitely not much in the way of wrestling. That's my take on Kalib Starnes. He is, however, a highly intelligent fighter, and he does switch things up during a fight. I've seen him try different things. He just doesn't fall into a routine. Now, his opponent in this battle will be Nate Quarry, record of 9-2. Nate Quarry is definitely a striker. He's a good technical striker, and he does have knockout power. His last 5 fights, all of which have been in the UFC, he's got a TKO in the first round over Loden Kincaid. He's got 2 knockouts over Pete Sell, 1 in the first round, and that's a bit of a controversy because both fighters actually say that the fight shouldn't have been stopped, and honestly, I have to agree with them. I think Pete Sell could have continued at that point. I thought that fight was stopped early, but nonetheless, in the rematch, in the 3rd round, Quarry did knock out Pete Sell. Now, having said that, Pete Sell was probably getting the better of him for most of that fight. I mean, not completely. Quarry was getting his own shots in, but I thought Pete Sell was doing a little better job in that. Then, of course, he had a loss to Franklin. He was knocked out in the first round by Franklin. And additionally, Quarry knocked out Shoney Carter, got a TKO on Shoney Carter in the first round. And that was a good stoppage as well, too. So he's also had back surgery, and he's got a little piece of plastic put in his back. And his age possibly questioned because he's not the youngest guy. I think he's 35 now, but not too old that I'd immediately rule that out. Those are the only 2 knocks. I don't know much about his ground game. We haven't seen much of it. Word is that he's not too bad on the ground, but to this point we haven't really seen it. So, on to the fight analysis itself. I think Nate Quarry is a bad opponent for Kalib Starnes. He's the type of guy that Starnes has been having trouble with, a la Yushin Okami and Alan Belcher, being a good striker that's hard to take down, a good technical striker. Against Levin, who's not so much a technical striker but just has good power, Starnes did much better. Has his stand-up defense and offense improved to the point where he can avoid the damage from Nate Quarry, who's probably a little better at taking apart a defense? Can he get Nate Quarry to the ground? Those are the big questions for Kalib Starnes. Nate Quarry, I think, has the ability to keep this on his feet and keep it on the feet. And I pretty much think he's going to be able to eventually work through Kalib Starnes' defense. And I don't think Kalib's going to be able to take him down. My prediction for this fight will be Nate Quarry TKO in the 2nd round.